My name is Carlos Alvarez. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a shift supervisor at Marston Fabrication, a mid-sized manufacturing company here in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been there for 8 years now. It's not glamorous work, but it's steady, and I've always taken pride in doing it right. My wife, Isabella, she used to say that's what she loved most about me, that I was patient, dependable, the kind of man who kept things together when life got hard. Lately, though, I've started wondering if that's exactly what she's begun to resent. It started 3 months ago. The first night she turned away from me in bed, she said she was tired. The next night it was a headache. Then, a long day. Now, she barely even looks at me when she walks through the door. I used to come home from work and find her waiting with dinner or a smile. Sometimes just a quick kiss before she went back to whatever she was doing. But these days, I get silence. The clink of silverware. The sound of her brushing her teeth behind a closed door. We used to talk about everything. Work, friends, plans. Now our words feel rehearsed, polite, empty. Tonight was the same. She was at her vanity brushing her hair, slow, mechanical strokes, pretending not to notice me standing in the doorway. "Isabella," I said softly, "we need to talk about this." Her reflection froze for a split second in the mirror. Then she smiled. That same smile she's been using lately. The one that doesn't reach her eyes. "There's nothing to talk about, Carlos. I'm just tired. You're imagining things." Tired. Again. I wanted to believe her. God knows I did. But something inside me, something deep, whispered that I was being lied to. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I listened to the rhythm of her breathing beside me, perfectly steady. She used to talk in her sleep, little murmurs about dreams or nonsense words that made me laugh. Now she slept in perfect silence, like a stranger. The next morning I found her in the bathroom before dawn, bent over the sink. She jumped when she saw me. "Carlos, you scared me." "Are you okay?" "Just something I ate," she said, wiping her mouth, already reaching for her purse. "That Chinese food didn't sit right." Funny thing, we'd eaten the same meal. I felt fine. She kissed me on the cheek, quick, distracted, and said she had to leave early. "Big client meeting," she added. I remember standing there in the kitchen after she left, holding my coffee mug, the one she bought me for our 3rd anniversary. World's best husband. The letters were faded now, but I could still read them clear as day. I took a sip of cold coffee and felt something twist in my chest. Because Glenfield Electric, the company where Isabella worked as a receptionist, didn't have clients. It wasn't that kind of business. When I met Isabella 6 years ago, she was the kind of woman who filled a room with warmth. She laughed easily, spoke softly, and believed in things like family and faith and building a home together. We married at St. Augustine's Cathedral in front of both our families. She wore my grandmother's pearls. We didn't have much, but we had love, and for a while, that was enough. The first few years were good. Great, even. We saved, bought a small house on Maple Street, planted roses out front. She wanted to wait on kids until she felt more settled in her career. I agreed. I was patient, always patient. But sometime this year that changed. She started working late, first once a week, then twice, then 3. She stopped leaving notes in my lunch, stopped texting me during the day, stopped caring, it seemed, altogether. When I asked what was wrong, she'd say, "Nothing, just tired." When I asked if she wanted to go out, she'd say, "Maybe next week." And when I tried to touch her, even just to hold her hand, she'd flinch like my skin burned her. That's when I started paying attention. Her phone, always face down now. New clothes, new makeup, new perfume. Expenses that didn't line up with her paycheck. And the lies. Small at first, but they added up. Last week she came home smelling like cologne, not mine. I asked about it, pretending to sound casual. She said, "Oh, that must be from the elevator. I shared a ride with David from the warehouse." Except Glenfield Electric doesn't have a warehouse. I know, I'd been there. That night she said she was sleeping in the guest room because she didn't want to toss and turn and keep me up. The guest room. Again. It was official. My wife was hiding something. And I decided I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not until I had proof. Because if Isabella was lying to me, I needed to know exactly how deep that lie went. 2 Thursdays later, I was digging through our filing cabinet for the refrigerator warranty when my fingers brushed something stuffed behind the insurance folder. A folded slip. I pulled it out. Planned Parenthood, Phoenix. Date, 6 weeks earlier. Services, pregnancy test plus consultation. In small handwriting. Positive. My hands went cold. 6 weeks ago was exactly when Isabella started recoiling from me, the morning nausea, the no wine tonight, the way her palm drifted to her abdomen when she thought I wasn't looking. I sat on the edge of our bed and stared at that paper until the minute marks on our alarm clock stopped meaning anything. It felt like someone had quietly replaced my life with a replica. The same furniture, same walls, same photographs. But nothing inside those frames was real anymore. I put the receipt back exactly where I found it. That evening she came home with takeout and that soft, careful voice you use on a skittish horse. We ate on the couch. She tucked her feet under her like she used to. She asked about my day and actually listened. And when I asked, she said Dr. Martinez wanted to run a few routine tests. Good, I said. I smiled. I even reached for her hand. Inside, I was memorizing the weight of the knife she'd put between my ribs. I did not confront her. Not then. I have always been a patient man. It's how you survive in a factory full of things that can crush you if you move wrong. You keep your breath steady and your timing clean. You wait for the right moment and then you act. So I waited. And I planned. The next morning before sunrise, I made a pot of coffee and a list. 3 lines. Legal, proof, exit. By noon, I was sitting across from Patricia Hoffman, a family attorney whose office smelled like old paper and lemon polish. She had gray hair, calm eyes, and the posture of someone who has watched storms walk in and out of her door for 30 years. I told her everything. Not the anger, there wasn't room for that yet, but the facts. The months of distance, the late nights, the receipt. "Do you want to save the marriage?" she asked. I stared at a picture on her bookshelf of a little boy on a swing. "I want the truth," I said. "Then you need proof," she said. "The law cares about proof." She explained non-invasive prenatal paternity tests, how early they could be run, how marital presumptions work, what it would mean if a baby was born while we were still legally married. She told me where to freeze joint accounts if I had to. She told me which documents to copy and where to keep them. "Get your ducks in a row," she said, sliding a packet across the desk. "And keep your voice level." I walked out with a folder heavy enough to bend a shoulder. That weekend, Isabella announced she needed to drive to Tucson to help her sister Elena with marriage problems. Isabella does not have a sister named Elena. I told her to drive safe and text when she arrived. After she left, I followed, 3 cars back on the I-10, sunglasses on, feeling ridiculous and very, very awake. She got off in Tempe, not Tucson. Parked in front of a 1-story house on Elm Street. A man came out in a faded Cardinals t-shirt, tall, athletic, dark hair. He kissed her in the driveway like it was an old habit. I parked across the street and took pictures. License plate, house number. Their silhouettes in the window, her head on his shoulder, his hand, calm, entitled, resting where my hand used to live. 2 hours later, I drove home with the kind of quiet that isn't peace, but the space a storm needs to grow. On Monday, I was back in Tempe by 7:20 a.m. The Cardinals t-shirt, James Rodriguez according to county records. Left the house in a red pickup, stopped for coffee on University, and took a call I could hear pieces of when I stood behind him pretending to read the pastry case. Told her husband she wants to start trying. Couple more weeks before she can tell him. I left my coffee on the counter. That afternoon I hired a private investigator, Robert Kane, a man with a soft voice and the kind of shoes you can stand in for 12 hours. I need a full workup on James Rodriguez, I said. Employment, legal, financial. And I need dates. He nodded like I'd asked him to pick up dry cleaning. You'll have preliminaries in 48 hours. They arrived the next day. Laid off from Morrison Construction 6 weeks ago. 2 prior police calls to his address for domestic disturbances. No charges filed. Delinquent on child support to an ex in Flagstaff. Mortgage behind 3 months. 6 weeks ago. The same week the receipt in my filing cabinet was time-stamped. I stared at the report until the bullet points turned into a single sentence. He is not a man who builds. He is a man who takes. Thursday morning I slid a GPS tracker, no bigger than a quarter, under Isabella's rear bumper while she showered. That night her late meeting dot lit up, left downtown, and parked neatly back on Elm Street. I walked the last block and took more photos. Through the glass I saw Isabella laugh at something. I saw him tuck a strand of her hair behind her ear like he owned the right. I saw his hand settle, again, on the gentle curve below her ribs. I emailed the images to myself, to a secure folder Patricia told me to create, and to an account nobody but me knows exists. Proof doesn't count if you can't put it on a table when the room gets hostile. At home, Isabella played it normal. She curled into my side during a crime show we used to watch together and asked if I wanted popcorn. I said yes, and in my head I heard Patricia's voice. Keep your voice level. On Friday, the DNA lab walked me through logistics for a non-invasive test. We'll need her blood and your cheek swab, the technician said. Results in 72 hours. And if she refuses? Then you wait until birth. I thanked her and hung up. I wasn't going to ask. I wasn't going to tip my hand for a test she could block. There are moments to fight straight. This wasn't one. That night, Isabella announced reservations at Romano's, the Italian place where we had our first date. She wore a new blue dress and the perfume I gave her the Christmas before last. She looked like the woman I married, and also like someone perfecting an exit wound. We ordered our usuals. She barely ate. "Carlos," she said at last, taking my hand across the table. Her palm was damp. "I have wonderful news." I let my eyebrows rise like I'd just seen a magic trick. "Tell me." "We're having a baby." She watched my face like it was a mirror she needed to adjust. 6 weeks, she added, testing the line she'd rehearsed. Late spring. I stood and kissed her forehead. That's incredible. I lifted my water glass. To us. To our future, she beamed, relief washing over her shoulders. That reminds me, I said, reaching into my jacket. I set a manila envelope between the bread plate and the candle. I brought something for us, too. She frowned, opened it. Photographs slid out first, driveway kisses, window silhouettes, timestamps. Then the background on James. The layoff notice, the arrears, the mortgage. Finally, the lab's paternity authorization and my retainer agreement with Patricia Hoffman. Isabella went white. The smile fell off her face like a mask slipping its hook. Carlos, how did you get pregnant during 3 months we weren't intimate? I asked quietly. How long were you going to make me clap for a magic trick you knew I'd never agreed to? Her mouth opened, closed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just let the truth sit in the middle of the table between the lasagna and the candle, and watched it do what truth always does when it's given room. It changed the air. Here's what happens next, I said. You'll pack a bag. You'll stay with a friend. On Monday, we'll file. And when the baby is born, there will be a test. We will do this clean. She nodded once, tears balancing on her lashes, then stood up so fast her chair scraped the tile. She left the envelope where it was. I gathered the papers, left cash for the uneaten dinner, and walked into a night that felt like mine again. Isabella moved out that Monday. She didn't fight, didn't beg, just packed a suitcase, took her clothes, her laptop, and the framed photo from our wedding. The one where she was smiling into the sun. She left the ring on the nightstand. No note. The silence she left behind was louder than any argument we ever had. The divorce papers went through without resistance. Patricia handled everything. Within 3 weeks, the bank accounts were split, the house signed over to me, and the paperwork filed. Arizona law still presumed I was the father until a DNA test proved otherwise. Patricia made sure that test would happen. I thought the hardest part would be signing those papers. It wasn't. The hardest part was learning how to live inside a house that suddenly echoed with absence. 3 months later, I got the call. The baby's been born, Patricia said. She's naming you on the birth certificate. We'll need you to appear for the court-ordered test. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. A week later, I sat in a sterile clinic room while a nurse swabbed the inside of my cheek and sealed it in a plastic bag. It took 48 hours. When Patricia called again, her voice was steady. The child isn't yours. I remember thanking her like she'd told me the weather. Then I hung up and sat at my kitchen table staring at the wall until the light outside changed color. A month after that, Isabella called. Her number flashed on my screen, and for a moment my thumb hovered over decline. But curiosity won. Carlos, she said, voice trembling. I made a mistake. Which part? I asked. The affair? The lies? Or thinking I wouldn't find out? She started crying. James is gone. He left. He said he wasn't ready to be a father. I'm alone, Carlos. I don't know what to do. You build from where you are, I said, like the rest of us. And I ended the call. Time passed in quiet increments. Work shifts, grocery lists, nights with the TV humming just to fill the air. The roses she planted in front of the house died that first summer. I didn't water them. 6 months later, I sold the house on Maple Street and moved to a smaller apartment in Scottsdale. No ghosts, no shared memories. Just walls and light. I got promoted to floor manager, started taking evening classes, learned how to cook for one. Every now and then I'd see Isabella's name in my phone. A message that started and stopped with, "Hey." I never replied. A year after the divorce, I ran into Patricia, my lawyer, at a grocery store. She asked if I'd ever think about remarriage. "Maybe," I said. "If I ever meet someone who doesn't flinch at the word honesty." She smiled. "Then you'll be fine, Carlos. Patience looks good on you." That night I drove home past the old neighborhood. The house still stood there, new owners now. The garden shed I built for her was gone, replaced by a small swing set. I didn't stop. People like to say closure comes when you forgive. They're wrong. Closure comes when you stop needing answers. I never got an apology that fixed anything. I never got back the years I spent loving someone who was already halfway gone. But I did get the truth, clean, sharp, undeniable. And that was enough. Because sometimes the truth is the only justice we ever get.